Carpet-bagging multinational gas conglomerates plan to buy our New York gas on the cheap and transport most of our gas out of state with gigantic pipelines. They have little to no desire to run gas supply lines in and around New York State for our homes and our industries. Just like a hit-and-run driver, gas companies want to make a quick buck and leave a mess. Gas companies say they'll fix the roads when they're done. Problem is, no one seems to know when they're done. In the interim, they just patch the right shoulder and usually stick the taxpayer with the final bill of repair. Home mortgage loans prohibit heavy industrial activity and hazardous materials on the property. Fracking brings both to you. Also, homeowners insurance doesn't cover the type of industrial risk fracking brings. Thus, homeowners can get slammed by dangerous fracking activity on their land that they can't even control. A growing number of banks won't give new mortgages on homes with gas leases. So if you go to sell your home, someone would have to pay cash for your property. How many people out there have cash to buy your house? Sadly, almost no one. So you'd have to give your home away. Gas companies say they'll repair your town's roads and bridges when they're done. Question is, when are they done? Sometimes the gas industry is bonded to fix the road or bridge, but more often than not, towns have to go to court to get the gas company to honor the bond. And how many towns are going to do that? In addition, gas companies don't include inflation adjustment clauses in their contracts.
Who's going to pay through the nose in the end for cleaning up the countless toxic waste sites? As more and more gas wells come in, property values fall dramatically. In Wise County, Texas, properties with gas wells have lost 75% of their value.
In Pennsylvania, 70% of the drill workers are from out of state. With all the drill workers looking for rentals, then up goes all the rents, along with a spiraling upward increase in food costs and other essential services.
Crime rates go up in frack gas areas, so you need more police, first responders, and prisons.
Who pays? You do!
Let's beat them with their own words. Green. Recycling. Right? If you ever want to be friends with the environmental people, just mention recycling. So suddenly, about 6 months ago, the word recycling was all over the PR. We have the technology now to recycle up to 90% of the returned water and the waste frac fluid. What they don't say is that, yeah, that's true. They have the technology to do that. But what they're not saying is that they're using it. I've had someone from a gas company say that not a single drop of fresh water that they bring to a well pad ever leaves as waste. All right? So that's called a lie. This guy's mother should have taught him better. There's also solid waste, which is now highly concentrated with all the bad stuff that Mother Nature, I love Mother Nature, she stored it down there for 350 million years and it was safe down there. We brought it back up to the surface, and now it's our responsibility to dispose of it properly so that we're not hurting Mother Earth and the people on its surface. And I don't see any technology yet. I don't see any industrial waste facilities under construction in New York State that have the proper machinery, the proper chemistry, and the proper processes to handle that highly concentrated waste. Until we do, there's no place to put it, and they're going to be sneaking it into landfills as they're doing now. They're going to sneaking it into back road dumping as they're doing it now, or they're holding it in storage ponds. I've had my friends at another university in Pennsylvania say that in Pennsylvania the technology's evolved now that they don't store returned water or frac fluid in open pits. And I know that's a lie. So what they're saying is the one company that's paying them to say it is using steel tanks for temporary storage. But I know for a fact that just last week, 22 cows were quarantined on a Pennsylvania farm because they were drinking returned frac water that was leaking out of an open pit. So these are the problems that we face. They have not yet been solved. Keep them out of New York State.
With natural gas prices plunging, losing over 2/3 of its value, Gas companies have little to no money to treat their toxic fracking waste. So in order to save money, they run it through municipal sewage treatment plants, illegally dump it in abandoned gas wells, illegally dump it in some back field, or just get towns and cities to spray it on their roads seemingly for dust control and snow removal. This is an appalling practice since the frack waste is very toxic with heavy metals, cancer-causing chemicals, radioactive elements like uranium and radium-226, and lots of salt. Regulatory capture occurs when a regulatory agency created to act in the public's interest instead advances the corporation's interest.
There's so much money involved with natural gas drilling in America that the big corporations essentially employ an army of lobbyists. They employ scientists, they employ lawyers. And every time there's a proposal to investigate or to try to develop regulatory efforts, they basically just try everything they can to kill those efforts. When 850,000 people couldn't drink water from the Monongahela River, essentially EPA became very, very concerned about the impact of natural gas drilling wastewater. Well, the most important revelation, I think, that has just come to light is the radioactivity in the natural gas drilling wastewater. So we've known that it has high total dissolved solids. This is the salty content, so if you dump it into a wastewater treatment plant, it just passes through. In addition, we know that there are very toxic chemicals included in the wastewater, notably benzene. But now we know that the radioactivity is at such an elevated level that the authorities were actually not only concerned about public health, not only concerned about the environment, they were actually concerned about the worker health at the rigs, that people might be exposed to radioactivity that could actually threaten their health and they wouldn't even know it. And the bottom line is in New York State, we don't have the capacity to manage this material for the duration of the time that it's actually radioactive or toxic. Publicly owned treatment works are designed, constructed, and maintained to essentially handle human sanitary waste only. And so there's extensive documentation that's posted at toxicstargeting.com where EPA scientists basically said if the treatment plants are not properly equipped with tertiary treatment or reverse osmosis, they should not be accepting this highly contaminated gas drilling wastewater. Now, we don't have a single wastewater treatment plant in New York State that's publicly owned that has that kind of capacity to take out the high salt, the toxics, and the radioactivity. And so the problem is it goes into the treatment plant and it passes right through into the receiving bodies of water. 3 million gallons of gas drilling wastewater were dumped into a treatment plant that's not capable of breaking down that material. The discharge is into a southern end of Cayuga Lake that's heavily impaired. It's on a national water body listing of impaired water bodies, but most importantly, it's only about a mile up gradient of a drinking water intake for 30,000 people. Canandaigua, New York also received 177,000 gallons of gas drilling wastewater from Pennsylvania. Dilution is not the solution to pollution. So when you dump these high salts, you dump these toxics, you dump these radioactive materials into bodies of water, they're very, very persistent. And the question is, where do they wind up? And so when you have wastewater treatment plants in Pennsylvania accepting up to 40% of their influent as natural gas drilling wastewater, that's how a 70-mile stretch of the river got impacted. That's how 850,000 people didn't have any drinking water. So this, again, is the linchpin issue that has not been addressed up until now. It's simply shocking that we're years into Marcellus Shale horizontal hydrofracking and these revelations are just occurring, but better late than never.
EPA scientists recommended doing the following studies. However, the EPA was persuaded not to pursue these studies due to gas industry pressure. Number 1, a study on the toxic fumes released during drilling.
Number 2, a study on the impact of fracking on the food chain.
Number 3, a study on the risk of radioactive waste to gas workers.
Number 4, a study on the contaminated runoff from landfills with drilling waste.
Number 5, a study on whether rivers can sufficiently dilute hazardous flowback fluid waste that has run through public sewage plants and then discharged.
Who's running this country?
The natural gas industry, or is it our government?
What our research shows is that because of this greenhouse gas methane, natural gas is mostly methane, incredibly potent greenhouse gas, much more so than carbon dioxide. So relatively small leakages of the natural gas have a really, really bad greenhouse gas footprint compared to coal. Our research suggests if you integrate out the effects of developing natural gas from 20 years from the time you start using it, it's far worse than coal as a greenhouse gas. It's really rather amazing. I mean, here's industry and our government and some green NGOs as well promoting this shale gas as this transitional fuel, and the amount of evidence behind that is almost non-existent. It's really criminal. We have a paper coming out this year in April 2011, which will be the very first scientific paper in a peer-reviewed journal on the subject. No one has published on this before, and we had to really scour unpublished industry and government accounts in order to get the numbers we have for that. Well, I don't think they're interested in what the true consequences are on any aspect of the environment, but certainly not on global warming. It's easier to promote it as clean if you don't bother to actually look and see. The industry doesn't have a good track record of trying to cut down these emissions. Let me say that. There are some technologies there. Some states regulate more than other states, and we can see that the emissions seem to be less in those states which regulate it more strenuously, but there's still a significant amount. Gases leak. Liquids leak. If you look at a city like New York, 20-25% of the water going into that city leaks. Gases leak more easily than water. And the average city and town in the United States loses 15 or 20% of its water. Shouldn't come as any surprise. We're estimating that somewhere around 3.6 up to maybe 7.9% of the gas is leaking out. The oil and gas industry, despite the fact that these are the largest corporations that have ever been on the face of the earth, they tend to do things on the cheap. ExxonMobil is now one of the biggest holders of leases in the Marcellus Shale. They've been buying them up over time. ExxonMobil stocks were falling last fall because their shareholders are nervous about that. They don't view shale gas necessarily as a good investment. And Exxon formally responded last October 2010, as reported in the New York Times, saying that maybe we're losing money now on shale gas, but we're going to make money once there's a carbon tax on it, once people worry about global climate change because it emits fewer gases than other fossil fuels. Our research and the new EPA results show that's not true. It's worse than other fossil fuels. That means ExxonMobil, logically, has made a really bad investment. They've gambled wrong, and if they can't cut down those emissions, they're in a lot of financial trouble with their holders. I think industry would like to get out of it at some point. It's a bit of a Ponzi scheme in this whole industry. People invested and others are buying into it. Who's really making money on it other than by selling leases and reselling leases? The price of natural gas right now, people aren't making money off the gas. They're making money off of selling a dream. I don't see how it could be a profitable industry if they really take even a modicum of environmental protection.